I would like the conveners of this roundtable are the Kenya ICT Action Network, the Association for Progressive Communications, Verizon, the International Chamber of Commerce, and the Kenya ICT Board. And we have representatives of these organizations today with us. We have a lineup of speakers who will speak to us about different themes related to women and internet governance, including cybercrime, privacy, data protection, education, and employment. At the end of this roundtable, we want to come out with ideas about priorities and empowering initiatives that will create more opportunities and build leadership for women. It's very good to see so many of you. We have sent invitations far and wide, and I think the turnout speaks of the effort that has come, that we've made to get a lot of women here today. So we have a lineup of speakers, and I want to introduce them just very briefly, and then they will speak for a few minutes, and there will be time for questions later on. We'll have for the opening remarks Edith Adira from IDRC. Do we have Edith yet? Not yet. So she can do her opening remarks a little bit later. Okay, and then we'll have from the APC, John Mullman to my right. We have Alice Monua from Kictanet, who is the most powerful woman in the IGF, here with us. So you have to keep your eye out for her. We also have Kathy Brown from Verizon, Aisha Hassan from the International Chamber of Commerce. And later on, we will have President Cruyff from the European Commission. Don't think she is in another meeting. So that's our lineup of speakers today. So let me then start with Alice, because I don't think Adira is here yet.
Thank you very much, Chat. I think mine is to help. I think with the opening remarks, and just to give to go back to the objectives of this and why we thought that an IG and women's session would be an important session to have the first day of the IGF. But to begin with, I would like to mention that Kenya has lost, I think, one of the greatest women, Dr. Wangari Maathai, who was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and she had a personal, for me, from my perspective, from my personal perspective, she had an impact on me, a great impact on me, because of just her life and her great life, her professional life, her advocacy and political life, and I think I'd like to ask for a moment's silence just to honor her as women before we begin. Perhaps I'll ask that we stand as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. As mentioned earlier, the idea of having a Women and IG session was discussed amongst the APC and industry representatives from Verizon and ICC. And we felt that it would be important, to begin to bring all the women that are very, actively involved in this area, both the ICANN processes, IGF processes, generally the ICT policy processes, and to encourage, and of course to encourage more women to be part of this process. So I'm very pleased to be here and to welcome you all. And to especially, thank the APC and ICC for having assisted us with organizing this session, and the ICT board. And to mention from an IDRC perspective, I think I'll have to represent Edith Adera here from IDRC. The IDRC has supported women in ICT research and policy advocacy activities in the East Africa region for quite a number of years, having supported the East African IGF, quite a number of research projects at the East African region, and one very pertinent one, women and cybercrime, privacy and data protection, that Grace Githaga is going to be representing on behalf of the Kenya ICT Action Network. But having said that, though, is also with pride that to recognize and acknowledge that there are more women from Kenya and the East African region that are involved in IG and IG processes, and to just mention a few of them: the ICT board, Eunice and Kaburo there, and Grace, and then of course Njeri Rionge for her work with ICANN for quite a number of years. So, coming from a space where there were not so many African women, especially East African women, it's actually quite, great to see quite a number of us being actively involved, not just at the civil society level, but private sector, and also being part of the government process and influencing government policy at that perspective, looking at it from, both a business, civil society perspective, but also from a gender perspective. So, the topics lined up are quite interesting. Next generation and education, looking at young women. Hopefully we are going to look at that, the idea of employment opportunities and challenges for women, as well as looking for long-term initiatives involving women in this area. So with those few remarks, I would like to welcome you all again and to hand over back to Chat, saying thank you.
Thank you, Alice. So we'd like to then ask Grace to as the first speaker.
Chat, I thought I was the second speaker. I'm just opening my documents now.
Sorry. Okay then. So we'll ask Jan then. Yeah?
Good morning, everyone. As Chat said, my name is Jan Moolman, and I live and work in South Africa with the APC's Women's Program. And I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about our work on internet governance and some of the key areas we think are important for us to have conversations about. And so I'll begin with our entry points into internet governance. And the first is to say that we see it as having a very important role in defining the roles and responsibilities of multiple stakeholders to actually begin to make the internet serve its democratic and transformative purpose. And we also believe, and know, and I'm sure you all believe, is that women and women's interests have largely been absent from these spaces. Our second entry point is to say that when you access the internet, you do so with all of your civil and political rights intact. And we believe that this should continue during the process and during your interaction with technology and the internet. So our rights to freedom of expression, freedom of association, bodily integrity and security of the person, we shouldn't leave these behind, and we don't leave these behind. Another point for us is that currently the dominant framework is one of protection. And what this means is that many actors who right now in our work are mostly governments and conservative fundamentalist forces are using the internet to restrict expression and sexuality. Our argument is that rather than a framework of protection, which has its roots in panic and anxiety, we need a framework of rights. So, what do we do as the Women's Program? Our starting point is within a women's rights framework, and our interest is the role of technology and the internet in realizing women's rights. Over the last few years, we've been working specifically on two broad areas. The one is around violence against women, and the second is around sexuality. Our work on violence against women really started as a response to increasing concerns around women's experiences of using the internet. And over the last 2.5 years, we've worked on a project in 12 countries, beginning to look at and examine exactly what is this technology-related violence against women, and how are women experiencing it. some of the most common forms that we found in our work, which is in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And in Africa, we work in Uganda, and Goretti from WogueNet is one of our partners. In South Africa, the DRC, and Congo. And so the most common forms of these types of violations are cyberstalking, harassment, blackmail, surveillance, and the digital manipulation of images. For example, in South Africa, and I'm sure in many other countries, there's been a huge increase in the recording and distribution of rape and acts of violence against women. And what we found is that there is very little, even within the kind of legislative framework, to respond to this. If a woman says, this is what is happening to me, my violation continues, and you go to the police station, and the police says, well, where's the evidence of harm? And so this is really a critical issue for us to begin to deal with, both in terms of the perspective of how do we remain safe, what kind of actions can we take, and that's just one example. Another example is within private and domestic relationships, where perpetrators are blackmailing women either into staying in relationships. So you're in a relationship with someone, you take a photograph or a video with your consent. The video, your relationship ends, and that video is then used to keep you in your place, manipulate you, and again, you go to the police station and they'll say, well, you did it. Yeah? So these are some of the kinds of complex issues that we believe we really need to begin to address. And some of our work in response to this is, of course, the whole area of policy development and looking at what some of the forms of redress that we can take. But the other is also around raising awareness and capacity building among women around their use of technology. What are the things that you can do to secure your safety? The other area of work is specifically around sexuality, and my colleague Jack is here in the room, and she'll also be able to respond to some of your questions. And the project is called Erotics, and it is a research project that looks at, 2 minutes, okay, I'm going to have to be very quick. It looks at the role of the internet in the exercise of sexual rights of different groups of people, from young women to LGBTIQ communities to looking at people who use publicly funded libraries in the United States. We are concerned with how content regulation impacts on rights. And a big finding for us is that the internet is a critical space in the exercise of sexual rights. So I'm going to quickly go through these next two and focus on the responsibilities of states and the responsibilities of the private sector. The first thing we believe is that we shouldn't be too anxious to create new laws, especially in a climate of rising conservatism, but rather look at the existing legislative frameworks and policies around gender violence, around gender equality and violence against women. We're saying we need to include women's rights and gender machineries and the representation of diverse groups in these conversations. And we're also saying that the protectionist approach that is being used ignores other aspects of rights. And lastly, we're saying that privacy protection is key. Private sector. The private sector and internet intermediaries play a key role in promoting and realizing women's rights. We accept this, but we also believe that we need to unravel this more. What is this role and what does it mean? The focus so far has been on intermediary liability. We believe we need to move to an approach that foregrounds intermediary accountability, particularly in the terms of use, the technical aspects, and also which considers privacy protection beyond data protection. And again, including women's rights and a diversity of groups in decision making. And I'm just going to give you one quick example. And I just need to turn to my notes. Facebook, for example, has a very top-down approach to kind of its policies and privacy responses. So we see it changes frequently. We don't know when the changes are going to happen. And often when something happens, you have nowhere to go. In India, a few years ago, there was a campaign called the Pink Chadi campaign. And what happened is that after the owners of the group complained about being spammed, they shut the group down. And where to go, what to do. On the other hand, you have YouTube, who allows users to be involved in decisions around the content. So you vote. So it's a much more inclusive way of looking at these issues. And lastly, some recommendations. Firstly, we believe it's really important to raise awareness about the impact of online practices, what you do, because often sometimes there seems to be some kind of disembodiment. What I do there is not what happens here. And one of the things that we're doing is we have a campaign called I Don't Forward Violence, which forces you to look at your actions and your use on a continuum of violence. That's one area. The other thing we do is we really try to promote the participation of women's rights activists in spaces like this. And in the room, we have colleagues from Asia, Africa, and Latin America who we spent 2 days with before this, trying to pull out the threads around internet governance and women's rights. We're also saying that the role of the state and private sector are key in ensuring accountability and the securing of privacy rights, and to create an environment where rights can be fulfilled. And lastly, we're saying that a framework of rights rather than a framework of protection is what's needed, because often the framework of protection results in criminalization, and we're saying it's much more than about that. There are many other points that need to be addressed. And we also really believe and want to emphasize that a rights framework transforms the conversation and gives us a more empowered position to work from than a protectionist approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And can we call on Grace? Grace, are you going to? Grace is at the back there. People can't see you. Are you comfortable there?
It's because I'm reading from my laptop, and there isn't a power.
Okay.
Socket
All
in
right.
front, yeah.
So have a look at Grace is over there.
Okay. Briefly, I'm just going to present. We conducted this survey. It was part of the Grace project. And it's on cybercrime and women. And it was necessitated by the fact that there's a lot of crime happening on cyber against women, but there is no attention being given to the topic, and yet women continue to suffer. So the objectives of our study were to investigate the prevalence of cybercrime against women. We also explored how cybercrime affects women. We also wanted to examine measures to address cybercrime towards women, and then determine mechanisms of engaging stakeholders to begin to address crime against women. In terms of methodology, we conducted literature review, and unfortunately, there is literature in this area is quite scarce. And then we also interviewed some ladies who had been affected. One of them was actually participating in a very popular show that comes every year. It's called Tasker Project Fame, and she agreed to be interviewed because she was among she was number 4 in the final contest. And before that, there had been a Kenyan who had been a favorite of the audience, and participants have, people participating in the show have to vote to remove one of the participants out, and she voted against one of the favorites, and there was even a hate page on Facebook, just to really abuse her. There were so many things. So we were able to talk to them, and we also were able to we wanted to also talk to another one in regard to the example that you have just given. She had a boyfriend, in that moment they would take pictures. There were nude pictures of her. Then when the relationship ended, he circulated them on email. And the girl came out in the papers and told people, please stop circulating those pictures. Yes, it is me, but I am very hurt, and I'm urging you to circulate. So she showed her humanness, and people stopped circulating. So in terms of what tools of perpetration, we found out that in terms of tools of perpetration, we found that, usually it's emails that are used a lot, and then it's also on Facebook. And again, now there's also a lot of text messaging. You get a hate message on text. And I wanted to just say some of the similarities there. We also found out that there are some similarities between online, say, stalking and offline stalking. So we found that the majority of of cases, and this was now like globally, involved former inmates, and there would be strangers to people. But also in the Kenyan case, and especially on text messages, a lot of women are getting that from inmates in our jails. And then, of course, it is a lot of women who are affected, and a lot of stalkers are generally motivated by the desire to control. Now, there was also something else that came out on the motivation, why stalkers, what motivates stalkers. And one of them is really sexual harassment. They just want to harass women. Some are also obsessed for love. You have seen this woman, you really want her, but she doesn't want you, so, you know, there's the element of stalking. And then there's, of course, revenge and hate. Another motivator was ego and power trips. You know, harassers online, they want to show off their skills to their friends. So they do not have any grudge against the lady, but they use their skills to show off their power to their friends. So we actually found out that this cybercrime online is happening. It's prevalent. But then a lot of you know, people we spoke to, you know, we'd asked, have you reported to the police? And they would say, particularly in this country, they would say they don't have confidence to do that. And I guess it's also because of the nature of our police force. You know, they will ask you such strange questions that you either get intimidated or you feel that they don't respect, you know, indignified. So a lot of women will not want to do that. So it is happening, it is there. And we also are looking at laws that, you know, is there a law that protects women? And in this country, we found out that, yes, we do have, in the Communications Act of 2009, there's a provision on protection, but it's on computers, it's on data, but there is really no acknowledgement on law against, you know, to protect human beings and especially women. So one of the things that came out is that, yeah, there is need for law, but most important, we have to make this an issue, because, you know, issues don't become issues until people raise them. So there is need also for advocacy and creation of awareness, so that we come up with laws that will protect women. Something interesting that also came out of the research is that women then fear to participate in, say, online debates because they fear being attacked. You know, they will make a comment and somebody will pick it up and turn it around and start, you know, and go now, you know, it will be issues below, you know, the belt. It will be issues, you are not married, you are single, you know, just making women feel that they have no right. So we find that there are very few women like wanting to engage, especially in debates that they think will make them, be attacked. So, and actually it's something we've also found out on Kictanet list. You know, we have debates, there are so many, you know, male voices in the debates. It doesn't matter whether they're policy debates, but you have very few women doing that. And actually Alice was one time attacked because she just made a comment and somebody, you know, picked on her, and it was not even on issues of the contribution, it was now her personal, you know, her personal life, and it was online. So a lot of women are telling us that. The lady in the Tusker Project Fame told us that she was very afraid of even opening Facebook, but she went to her privacy settings and actually set them in such a way that even if you are looking for her on Facebook, you'd never find her name. But she was also afraid after the Tusker Project Fame, because they go into an academy. She was afraid of coming out to town because she didn't know how people were going to treat her after she had read all the hate messages on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. I think this really puts to the fore one of the issues that women have been facing for quite a long time. And I think one of the things you were saying is around, apart from law, is is really the education for law enforcement, so that something can be done. And that's a good thing. No, so from this area, we go now to looking at another area which is very, very important for women, and that's education as well as employment. So I'll ask Kathy.
I'm Kathy Brown. I come from Verizon, which is the largest, I believe, mobile provider in the United States. We also provide broadband services in a large part of the east coast of the United States. We put in probably the fastest networks in the world, and are now deploying the next generation wireless technology in the U.S. called LTE. We did a lot of talking about this yesterday at the ministerial, and whether the developing countries would actually embrace this technology as a real leapfrog technology. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And thirdly, we provide we are one of about 3 of the large internet backbone providers in the world. So all of that traffic that's coming across the oceans, many of it is on our networks. When we think about women in this area, we think about 3 things. We think about empowerment, we think about education, and we think about health and safety. When I was reading about Kenya's amazing Nobel laureate this morning, I thought, how would she be educating about the environment and organizing folks and getting the word out today? And I suspect she would be using a smartphone. I suspect that the tools that she would have in her hands now, as many of you do now, are the tools that are proliferating all over but have made our lives very differently. And for women, it seems to me, we have to be part of the conversation about how these technologies can be used for our own empowerment, for our own education, the education of our children, and for our health and safety. The empowerment issue is enormously important right now. Our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, who we as women in the United States feel very close to, made an important speech just this past month at APEC, talking about the notion of economic development for women, and stressed very loudly that all people in all societies need to be able to participate in the economic health and welfare and growth of their countries. Once again, as I read her speech, I see our technologies as an important tool to do that. And we know, as we listen to the various conversations that are happening here around healthcare, around job creation, around entrepreneurship for women, that it's these technologies, it is connection to the internet through now mobile devices, which are proliferated across all spectrums of our society. And we walk along, we know women have these tools in their hands, that this is the connection to the world of work, to the world of prosperity, to the world of growth. On the education side, it is clearly apparent that this is a tool, the internet, for the education of our children and ourselves. So what are we doing at Verizon? We have, I think now rated the 2nd best in the country. I'm trying to get it to be the first online curriculum that is standardized across all of our age levels and across a great array of subjects as a supplement for teaching in the schools. And as we all know, women are the teachers of our children. And women need to understand how to use these technologies in order to be able to tap into all of that information and expertise around the world. So we spend a great deal of time both developing the curriculum and the website with very, very good partners, including places like the American History Museum, the Kennedy Center, Academy of Mathematics to put curriculum, to put supplementary materials in the hands of our teachers. And we also do a lot of teacher training so they can understand how to use these materials. This year we have 5 demonstration schools, all of which are in areas that would not have these technologies but for our going into the schools, to try to get folks to use them, to get teachers to use these technologies, for moms and kids to use them as well. And to tell you a little bit, another piece of this, which of course is the smartphone or the cell phone, not even texting, let's face it, is the way most of our young women are talking to each other, at least in our country. I suspect here as well. They're talking to each other in text. And using those technologies, the texting, that we can get information back and forth to networks, which women do very well. We've always been about networks. These are tools that make the networks closer and more vibrant. We're now using those tools for homework help, for conversations with parents. Very low tech, right? Texting. Then we go up into the apps world and able to now start to develop on our mobile devices the applications that people need to use in the home. And this very, very cool thing that I'll report more about because we're just starting it is this wireless robot that will actually go to school for you. Now imagine this. This robot, which runs on our LTE 4G system, has eyes, i.e. a camera, ears, it has an audio system, where suppose your child is home ill, the actual robot is in school. It is watching, it is participating, it is actually in the school, so the child can watch what's going on in the classroom. We'll let you know how this all works out, but at least 3 of our schools are going to try it. And they're going to see if a child is homesick, whether he or she can't be virtually in the classroom. I want to make one last point now about family health and safety. Violence against women is also, it is prevalent across the world. In the United States, at Verizon, we very early understood the power of the cell phone for safety. We have had a program for the last 10 years called Hopeline. And those phones have been put in the hands of women all over the United States as a way to connect to safety, as a way to connect to help. As this program has evolved, we understand what I heard 2 women just say, that this is not just about protection, right? It's about our rights. And it's about educating the other parts of this system as to how this woman can survive in a home that is violent and in a community that doesn't want to believe her. And so we've taken it a lot of our resources now to work with law enforcement and have done huge funding to justice centers where all of the different pieces of the safety community can come together and talk to each other about how to break this very, very bad notion that the woman is bad, that law enforcement should be protecting somehow the home and not her, that the children are at risk and somehow we have to get them into school. And we're using our technologies as a way to network each of those pieces. This year we launched a major initiative with men. This is not just about women, it's about men. And so we've launched a huge initiative with our football league called the NFL. And we all understand that if we want to reach our men, one of the best ways to do this is right through our sports. In the U.S., it's football. And so we have a partnership now with the NFL to start talking about healthy respect for women, and not in a way that shakes one's finger, but in a way to talk about boys growing up with respect. We are actually at football camps talking to the boys who come in to learn how to play football about healthy relationships. All of this, by the way, we're using this mobile technology to make sure we're connected to each other and that we have the word going out that one can always reach out and talk to somebody else. Be safe, be educated, and be empowered in your own life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I think the notion of a safety community and the participation of men, because it's really a combined responsibility, is really fantastic. So now I'd like to ask Aisha Hassan from the ICC2.
Thank you very much. I'm Aisha Hassan from the International Chamber of Commerce. I manage ICC's Internet and ICT policy work and the BASIS initiative, Business Action to Support the Information Society. So I'm really pleased to be here and speak to you from having had the opportunity to become a professional woman working in the Internet governance arena. I'm not an expert, I haven't done studies, but I'm sharing with you because I'd also like to hear from a lot of the women and men in this room as we all think together about how we can motivate more women to be involved in the technology fields, but also how to get more women involved in the internet governance processes that several of us are involved in. So I'm pleased to share some of my personal thoughts about this and some observations and reflections on things that we can all be thinking about in terms of how to give more women opportunities to get involved in what some of the challenges might be in terms of employment. Just a fun anecdote, I've been really impressed in Kenya when I've had connectivity issues at the hotel. All three of the technicians who have come to help me have been women. And they have been just wonderful, and I've told them all about this session, and unfortunately they're not at the UN compound, but they were all really interested. So that already says something about Kenya and employment opportunities in the IT field. I think as many of us who have gotten involved in this area have experienced, I mean, education has been a gift. It's been one of the most productive elements of helping us to move along. And so I think taking back to our national experiences to make sure that there is attention being paid in the educational system all along the way to open doors for girls and women. And then in business, we talk a lot about the enabling environment, and we're also talking about it in the context of promoting innovation and investment. And special attention can be paid to promoting opportunities for women to become small and medium-sized enterprise owners and involved in global business. We have some executives around the room who are professional women in major companies, and I think that thinking about what does that take at the national level to motivate and open doors for people, for women. Some of the other observations I have are around potentially some of the obstacles that are there. I think some of them may be cultural. And that's something that we have to continue to pay attention to, the relationship between what women's responsibilities are along the track in life as they're getting educated and getting involved in being professional women. What are the other responsibilities that they have in life, and how does the culture support or not support them? This comes back to also, you know, we see in different countries, particularly in some European countries, there are very important enabling environment conditions that help women to both pay attention to a family life as well as to their professional life. And that applies in the internet space as well. Technology is actually something that can free women up, give you more flexibility. But enabling women to have that kind of flexibility is something that may also take society paying attention to it. It may take public policy approaches that help them have the support systems that they need. Another thing I was going to say is that there's a lot out there about women and getting educated and involved in technology fields in the IT field, but a lot of the women in this room are actually involved in legal management, policy-oriented jobs. And so some thought around how do you encourage and raise awareness around the world in the female communities about those kinds of opportunities and the kind of skills that they would want to develop to get involved. I personally love what I do, and I think that it's important for us to be very cognizant that somebody had mentioned in the attack online area that women may not be comfortable to engage in certain kind of discussions, but encouraging young women in different ways to build their skills to get engaged in these kinds of professions is something we can pay attention to as well. Lastly, I also wanted to just touch on a couple of other elements that may be helpful. Some people that I've talked to have talked about how paying attention to developing content that is that gets women more engaged online is an important element. The multilingual element of that, so that women are engaged in their own language and we reach a broader array of women in that way. And lastly, I mean, in the business community, we often look around because we're really trying to find women professionals who can speak, who are experts on certain areas, and we are very privileged. We do have a lot of women who are experts in a number of the internet governance policy areas, but paying attention to that and encouraging new women who have not had a chance to share their expertise. Part of that is a community's focus on this issue, and wanting to encourage young women and women who are professionals of all ages to get engaged. There's some nice efforts being made in the ICANN space. Alice mentioned this. There's a group that has been formed by some key women in the ICANN space called Women in the Domain Name System, DNS, and I hope to see that kind of initiative grow. I think we can all work together to empower more women, and I'd really like to hear from women in this room about the opportunities and challenges and the things that they personally have observed in their own environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. I think one of the things you pointed out is around mobility, which is very important for women to be able to, not be restricted in their mobility, and technology plays a lot of role in that. And that, aside from that, of course, is the enabling environment to be able to take advantage of that technology. I want to invite Dorothy Oko now to sort of who's from Nokia here in Kenya, to respond with a few comments to the presentation just now.
Thank you. I'm sorry I just came a bit late. We had some drama in the registration place, so I really came at the tail end of Aisha's presentation. But so I'm not really in a position to respond, but I will just give my impressions coming from this part of the industry in this part of the world. Regarding the employment opportunities, I think working for Nokia in East and Southern Africa, what we have observed is more engaging with developers. So just explaining what Nokia does, we deal with the handset, but we also deal with applications. So a lot of the developers who deal with software issues, we engage them to do work for us. And we engage with a lot of university students, so we have a lot of partnerships with the university students. And I think my observation, it's still a male-dominated area, male-dominated field. And our challenge has been to encourage women as well to just come and enjoy technology and see what mobility can do. And if I look at our research center as well, the people that we have hired and looked at the people we have engaged with or doing research, most of them then tend to be women. So our office is actually very, it's very interesting. We have more women who are doing research and engaging other students to be able to be interested in this. But I'll refer to one, we had a discussion a few months ago at a session Pivot 25, and I think the challenges that the women raised then was that there was a session which was just for women, and they felt that that is not how you encourage women to be involved in the process, that part of it is actually just having women and men being part of the forum. So if I look at the session today, we are really predominantly women, and that maybe a good indication is not having these isolated forums. So I'm just challenging us and maybe inviting more men, because sometimes some of the main decision makers, if I look at our GM or the head of the research centers, are men. And how do we engage them so that they are able to see the need to have more women and to engage more women in these scientific and the ICT forums, because if I look at Kenya, and I look at the leads, they're mainly women. You look at Alice Munywa, Wamboi, Kaboro, all of they're women. So how do we let the men come in the session, so we are not having a predominantly just female session as we've had? And I think this was a challenge that was raised a few months back, and that we need to do better by making it more open, so that we are able to have an exchange on what we can do and how we can improve and where we can improve and what are the challenges needed or what they have observed are the things lacking that we can then work on to make ourselves stronger, to make ourselves presentable and more competitive in the arena.
Thank you, Dorothy. I think what you have said, and also what Aisha was saying earlier about that there are internet governance spaces that we can in fact be much more active in. And if this is a room full of women, then we actually have all these women who can participate. So there's no excuse to say that, oh, but we don't have women who can participate in these spaces or this body. So, and I guess here at this session, you'll meet a lot of, there's much more interaction that can be done. We do not have President Kreutz yet with us from the European Commission. I think she might have been held up. So can I ask Eunice Karaoke to give us maybe just a short intervention?
Good morning, everyone. We were expecting to have the chair of Kenya ICT Board to present at this forum today, but in her absence, because of other issues that came up, I am going to share what interventions Kenya ICT Board is working on to try and bridge the gaps in these internet governance issues for women. But before I go into that, I just wanted to make reference to my own personal experience of how these issues affect women. Before joining Kenya ICT Board, I worked for Microsoft, and while I worked there, my job was a numbers job for those who are in sales jobs, and therefore the pressure was high, so I needed to really get on with the job and try and be everywhere where I thought I could get my numbers. This is what women very often have to do, as well as men. But the interpretation of that, and specifically in interacting with government, because I was responsible for the government account, my efforts were misinterpreted to mean that it is the female in me that was getting me through government doors. And yes, through the Kiktanet forum, I was called names, and my former colleague Tonya over there, Tonya Kariuki, will bear me witness on this. I was seriously insulted, and I remember going into a depression for nearly 2 days and getting specialized counseling from the legal department of Microsoft, because it affected me quite a bit to be insulted for doing what I was actually employed to do. Therefore, this is just to say the issues are real. It did not also end there. When I joined the government, the same thing followed me, only because I took a position on a mobile application that is changing the emerging markets, and this is a money transfer mobile application that you probably have heard about, the mobile money transfer by Safaricom. And Sylvia was supposed to be here. I don't know whether she's here before I say too much about Safaricom. But I just took a position to say that that was an innovation and it should be given its fair space in the market. And I took that position because I work for Kenya ICT Board, and our job is to promote the use of ICT. So that be as it may, let me just quickly touch on one or two things that we at Kenya ICT Board are doing to try and intervene for women. one of the things we do and we literally practice is to take advantage of the law, and I want to thank the Kenya government for putting a law which specifically says that women have got to have, or rather in the employment sector, women must at least take 30% of the employment space in any organization. I am pleased to say we lead from the front, and Kenya ICT Board actually has met that obligation, and we have a lady chair, and we believe we have done well, and there's more work to be done, but that is just one of the things that we leverage to demonstrate how we can use the legal frameworks within the government to be able to give women an opportunity. And so we are also having various initiatives that leverage ICT and the internet in general, and we try to not necessarily have them designed purely for women, but we leverage the programs that we have to give women opportunities. I will cite a few examples, and one of them is a Digital Villages program that we roll out at Kenya ICT Board, and we have called it Pasha Villages, Pasha Centers. Now, we have benefited from a grant from the World Bank, and our approach is to look for entrepreneurs. When we advertise for these grants, we encourage women to apply and therefore run these centers, and it is our belief by women running these centers, they have an opportunity to put in those centers the kinds of services that can empower women and give them more access and opportunities to express themselves. Most importantly, to exploit the information that is available on the web to empower themselves. At the same time, we have a different project, which is a digital content project, which is driven by my colleague right next to me here, Kaburo Kobia. And for this one, we give grants as well, thanks to the World Bank, to people to develop both mobile and internet applications. When we advertise, we also encourage women to participate and encourage the development of such content that can also empower women more, so that they can fight some of the cybercrime issues that are being experienced. It is our hope that the content that women would develop and put out there would help to create more awareness about the opportunities that women have, including employment opportunities, because a woman who has a job, a well-paying job, is actually a woman who can earn respect. When usually they actually don't have much, especially before our counterpart men, and I say this with a lot of respect to our men in the society. This content helps a lot of sharing, and so in my experience, what I experience, I am able to share using Facebook, Twitter, all of these social tools, and advise other women. For instance, I personally take responsibility to advise young women using the Facebook to just be careful about what pictures they put on the Facebook, and to be deliberate when they use their images there, because the images could be misinterpreted, or the status messages they put there. It's more to tell them, beware, be deliberate in what you intend to do, so that you're not taken advantage of, so that in case you're taken advantage of, you know how to stand up for yourself, as opposed to tell them, don't do it. So that is the difference. And then just to generally have content that to encourage development of content that can educate women. And one way, again, through the content grant is, for instance, if we get applicants who are doing TV series, movie, short programs that can educate women and show opportunities for women, that can help them to fight cybercrime. We feel that is very good. But most importantly, the Kenya ICT Board is driving projects that are towards achieving e-justice. Women very often will not access justice, or it may be delayed just because they cannot fight their way because of many reasons. We are busy people, we have children, we have to take them to school, we have to work and all this. And where justice is completely manual, it becomes very difficult. But when it is e-justice, and you can just use the internet or an SMS to know when is your appointment, and you don't have to go and queue for hours on end. This is some of the ways that we feel we are empowering women to be able to assume and access justice. And again, e-service in the government. And unfortunately, there has been a lot of accusation, it's out in the space, that very often people have had to cough out a little cash here and there to get access. We believe if we automate a lot of services, women can access some of these services at home and really can bypass the brokers who really interfere with them. So instead of looking at it from the negative side entirely, we prefer to look at it, or rather we have elected to look at the other side and leverage the projects and programs that we are running to empower women to be able to use the internet. Again, to participate more, we are encouraging students to come out and be involved in programs like the iHub. I encourage those who will have an opportunity to visit the iHub. You go there, you find young women really assuming the space in the internet and trying to do what they have to do. This is, in my view, the way I feel would be the right intervention and a lasting one. If we have more women leaders in the ICT space, and in Kenya we are doing very well because we recently they have been listed in the Forms magazine, a good list, a respectable list there. Then we begin to have role models, and these are the kinds of interventions that are lasting. Thank you very much.
May I just want to make sure that this was very good, and this notion of role models becomes so important. So I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledged our highest ranking woman in our government in communications, and that's Commissioner Mignon Clyburn, who's here, and she's doing amazing work for us. Mignon, say hello. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew what's happening in the U.S., that we have a woman's voice at the table, and we very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So we've heard different perspectives. We have big and small initiatives, and I want to open the floor for questions, other challenges, and other I guess initiatives that you think will be very useful to move our agenda forward. So the floor is yours. So let's have some hands. B, and then the woman over there.
Good morning, everyone. I think it's a very interesting panel, and I think it's great when women have more space now in IT, technologies, internet there. It's quite fascinating because I know lots of my friends in Thailand who are the single mom. Sometimes they're using the internet as a hub, and sometimes it's quite urgent, like nighttime when your kid not stop crying. Some of my friends will be online and ask the other single mom, what should I do, blah, blah, blah. It is fascinating in that sense when women are having access to use the internet. But I guess my point, my name is Pranom Sombong, I'm working and running together at the movement in Asia Pacific Forum on Women, Law and Development. We work a lot with women who doesn't have access to internet. And our concern also in this world now is the communication of the knowledge as a profit. It serves a lot on the expenses of the poor woman who doesn't have internet access. And I think we have to realize about that fact of actually the internet we are using nowadays, or technologies we are enjoying in some certain part of our life, they are coming with the cost for women who doesn't have internet, but they pay the cost. What cost they are paying? We're seeing women are working in the factory, which is the IT production, and we work a lot with the women in the factory who do actually complain about their working condition, and many of them in Asia is learning less than $100 per month, and they work more than 10 hours per day. I think this issue really need to be addressing. Because for women, for us as a movement and supporting the other women, we always saying it's the power we share is power we have. So what about women who have more opportunity to economic, to socials, but what about our women who don't have that opportunities, and they're actually in the supply chains of the product we use in the IT. That's my point. And the other issue is
Short.
Oh yeah. I think it's fascinating also to look at the other issue of when women have more chance to work outside home and be in very high management level. Many times we need somebody to work for us in the household, and it's domestic worker. And I just want to address the issue of domestic worker. In many cases, in many countries, it's very difficult for them even have the right to communicate to their family at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Bee. I also want to say that to invite, if we have the Serbian State Secretary with us today in the room, and just to acknowledge her and to say that she's also someone like our minister from the US who also works on women ICT at a very high level. So if we have her here, then I'd like to invite her to also say a few words. But if she's not, then we can go on to, I think, yes. And can you please introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Nina. I run my own business. It's an ICT consultancy. I run it from the bedroom, the sitting room, and the kitchen. I'm speaking on 4 points. Hey, thank God I didn't say I run it in pajamas. Right, I'm speaking on 4 points, and I'm just one hell of a lucky girl, because the first thing I want to speak about are my mentors, my women ICT mentors. And that's one who just came in. Her name is Dorothy Gordon. She is the Director General of the Kofi Annan Center of Excellence in ICT. And my other ICT mother is this one that I've told to move away so I can come and speak. She's Fatimata Saisile. So these are the two women who gave birth to me technologically. So I'm happy to honor these two women here today. These are women, I'm already a 2.0 version of them. Now, quit laughing. The other thing I want to speak about is for women to be participative in the internet space, we need to create more people like me, basically people who create content, people who blog, people who tweet, people who take pictures. So we need more women content creators for the internet to make space, because I talk about what I'm interested in, which is mostly what women are interested in. My third point is on making the internet an income making issue for women. If I'm using the internet, is because it feeds me, it pays my bills as an African woman. So it constitutes an income and independence, financial independence for me. So the day the internet becomes a means to an end, then we are going to have more women, because we need to take care of our families. And finally, if I'm running an ICT business, it is because I can read, write, and I can create content. And this is because I am educated. So we need to pay more attention to actually basic level education, because the more women we get at basic level, the more we'll get at the higher level, and the more we will eventually get at the internet and IT level. Thank you very much.
Very well said. Thank you. Over on this side, Mr. Ramjan, yes? Just introduce yourself and...
I'm Ramadurai from India. I'm the ICC Basis Chair and also the Vice Chairman of a company called Tata Consultancy Services. Just as a background, I'm also advising the Prime Minister of India on skills building for the nation. And the problem which we encounter is about 500 million Indians to be skilled, 500 million, I didn't get the number wrong, by 2022, based on our demographic profile. What we talked this morning was with regard to advocacy, which is very critical, whether it is for a girl child or a male child. And participation in forums like this becomes extremely important. The inclusivity which you talked about, very similar to open source, including men as a part of these deliberations. I was invited to this by Aisha, that's why I'm here. Education becomes the most important part of everything. Technology plays a very critical role in education, and we are trying to deploy to educate within the country using technology as a backbone. And we talked quite a bit about the broadband and more importantly, the rural broadband and the implications it can have on education. You don't have to go to a school because the schools don't exist in a country like ours. If the schools exist, the facilities for a girl child doesn't exist, so technology is going to make a very, very critical contribution in the role. The empowerment comes through education, and empowerment leads to employment. So education with employment is a critical component. Education for the sake of education is not going to lead us anywhere. So the outcomes are extremely important, and outcome-based is the most critical component of all of these. Having said that, we need to look at the rural and the urban very differently. The urban child or the urban people get to know, have access to education they can afford in a certain way, unless you are in certain urban areas where we have very similar problems to the rural areas. But more importantly, the access becomes a lot easier in urban locations. When you come to the rural population, and the rural forms the majority of the population, the interventions are very different. Technology will become available in the next couple of years through broadband across 250,000 panchayats, which cover the entire country, and then followed by content and the ability to spread the message in education, healthcare, or any of these things, which are trying to do some proof of concepts. The reason I'm elaborating on that is women's self-help groups have played a phenomenal role in the education, in empowering, and also employability and creating entrepreneurship through some of the interventions. We thought during the next IGF session, we may even sponsor through the Tata Consultancy Services some of these empowered women through the self-help groups to come and participate in these forums. Language would be a barrier, but they are quite capable of learning English or understanding and then making an effort to contribute to these forums where you see the actual action on the ground. Coming to the urban side, women in the organizations have become a way of life in a country like ours. We run an organization in TCS, the ICT company, largest in the country, 200,000 employees, of which 30% are women, which means we're talking about 60,000 women employed within the country itself. So the scale and engaging and employing and empowerment is what I'm talking about. Rural and urban we need to look at differently, but any ideas which any of you may have, where the scale-up is in millions, scale-up is no longer in thousands and tens and 50s and hundreds. If you have any ideas through technology, through interventions, teachers training, or the enrollment to empowerment to employment, and be more than welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, other questions? Here and then over there. Yes, please. Yeah, just.
Actually, thank you for the presentations. I'm Jolene Paclarin from the Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau from the Philippines. We've been talking of a lot of ways of addressing issues concerning women, and I would like to embark on a particular advocacy that we are also carrying in the Philippines, which is to focus on the continuum of empowerment. I mean, most of our, let's say, policies or laws are basically focusing on preventing or addressing VOW, minimizing VOW. But I think one particular concern that I would like our business, people from the private sector and even those in the government agencies to embark on a particular advocacy on how do we continue women's empowerment. By number one, economically. Second, it was raised many times, freeing the women from violence. And thirdly, from ignorance. Using IT as a form of knowledge building. I think if we can challenge or we can ask our speakers here in terms of what they can think clearly as concrete recommendations of how we can continue empowerment of women, particularly in the issue of internet governance. Thank you.
We'll ask our speakers to respond a little bit later, but we can take two more questions, I think, at the back.
I'm Claudia Selli from AT&T. I wanted mainly to pick up from what the chair of ICC said concerning empowerment, which comes through education. And at AT&T, we firmly also believe that, and we are supporting different initiatives also to encourage education. We have, for example, the Aspire program to address, which is an initiative where we address high school success and college and workforce for all the students. Then we also have an initiative which is Introduce Girl to Engineer, where annually basically we have women who are engineers who mentor girls and that show and share their experience with them to build models. And then also we support other programs such as, for example, Girls Inclusive, which is an educational program also for millions of American girls, particularly those in underserved areas, and also we support other organizations. I wanted also to congratulate for this roundtable, which is very useful, and I think that the debate shouldn't stop here, that it should continue, and probably also in our different countries, and raise awareness about that, because it's very important, I think.
Okay, I have a few people now on the lineup. There was one hand here. Yes, Hani, yeah, and then I think here, and next.
Morning, everyone. My name is Hani. I'm a volunteer in an organization called Empower from Malaysia. I just wanted to make a... Okay. I just want to make 2 points and perhaps one question. One is that when we talk about doing legal reform rather than legislative reform, there are 3 components to it. One of which is actually the legislation itself. But I think a lot of times we concentrate too much on doing reform on the substantive law itself, and we don't pay enough attention to the law of evidence and the law of procedure. And these two will kill you when you get to court and you can't prove your case. So if for groups who are thinking of doing that, please think about procedure and evidence. Now, the other 2 key things that are related when you do legal reform as well is the training of judges. That's one component, and the other one is, of course, the prosecutors and the police. In Malaysia, some of the prosecutors are also police if it is a lower level crime. So you actually also need to do things like awareness raising, and of course, if it is like cyber crime, then you really have to put effort into also informing the judges and the prosecutors about how to appreciate this sort of evidence. I speak from personal experience because I'm a practitioner, and it's really, really tough to prove your case in court. Now, the second point I wanted to make was it's great to hear that you're actually funding programs involving men, but for those who are interested, there's also the White Ribbon Campaign and Men Can Stop Rape, which I think is based in Washington. The other big thing that is very hard to get funding for is actually research. So for all the corporations who are here, perhaps you'd like to also do some, put some money into research, because if you don't have data on like how women react when they are being assaulted, whether it's sexual or otherwise, it's actually very hard also later on to bring it into court. So can I also just draw your attention, if you're interested in this sort of research, please go to Google WCC Penang, so it's WCC PENANG. Yeah, NANG. Sorry, WCC PENANG. Now, if you go to this website, there's a section there that talks about the sexual crimes research that was done, and some of the data there will be absolutely shocking. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take a round and then a round of a few more, and then we'll ask our speakers to respond. Yes, Leslie, and then.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Cowley. I'm a wife and a mother. I'm also a CEO. I'm the CEO of Nominet, who run the .uk registry, and I'm also chair of the country code organisation in ICANN, which is the equivalence of .uk. So from that experience, I'd just like to kind of speak to the gender deficit in ICT and in women being involved in internet governance, because actually, on a positive note, I think there are absolutely huge opportunities for women in this area. And I would very much like to encourage everyone in this room to get involved, whether big time as chairing or small time as speaking and making your points as you can, because we have good things to say. The other thing I'd like to say is that I guess as a CEO, I think I have a huge responsibility to supporting women in the workplace and to leading by example in that. And I think as also part of a network of CEOs, it's about encouraging other people to do the same. And personally, I think women can also be very good at mentoring and coaching, as somebody was alluding to earlier. And I think people in this industry very much almost have a responsibility to help other women get engaged and play a role, because the opportunities are out there and we need to have a much stronger voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Or behind. Thanks. I want to apologize for coming in late, but because this was a session that was very... Oh, sorry, there's two Dorothys.
Dorothy, this is Dorothy Atwood.
Okay.
Actually, I'm just incredibly impressed with the number of Dorothys in this room. It's remarkable, so yay. My name is Dorothy Atwood. I'm with the Walt Disney Company and executive with the company. And I wanted to just make a couple of observations because let's not just focus on women as in the context of philanthropy or education and how that can empower. Let's focus on women as a market opportunity. Let's recognize that technology with women is different than technology with men. So when women account for 6 out of 7 of the purchasing decisions globally, when it comes to the home and when it comes to the marketplace, that if businesses focus on the power of women in the commercial marketplace, that's a very powerful impetus to, in fact, increase participation of women as consumers and women as business executives. So let's focus on that market opportunity. And then I'd point out there was a great work done by Women, the GSMA Foundation, that I know was sponsored by several people in the room. AT&T and Vodafone, for example, were founding sponsors of that, where work was done to show how when women use cell phones, that there's a disparity in the current use of cell phones. 2/3 of the cell phones are owned by men, but that is a market opportunity for companies targeting women. And the fascinating thing is when women use the technology, what they tend to use it for is for the family and community. So a woman's getting technology in the hands of women tend to become much more associated with economic development for the entire community than simply for the benefit of that particular user. And so we can't lose sight again about the fact that there is a real sustainable model for pushing technology in the hands of women and how that can actually increase the overall economic development of the region. And so I just wanted to make those observations, and some really good work being done by GSMA, and I would encourage people to look at that.
That reminds me of saying that says that when you educate a woman, you educate a community. I think we have, you did raise your hand. I didn't forget. Okay, please, and then the next.
Thanks. My name is Marilyn Cade. I too sometimes operate my business from wherever I am in my house or wherever I am in a coffee shop. I had the unique opportunity on my second trip to Kenya this time to join the Computer Society of Kenya in visiting a rural girls' school. It was a very profound opportunity for me, and I wanted to touch on something that I'm hearing that I hope we will all think more about, and that is how we broaden the understanding of the importance of basic education, and that basic education now has to include this new concept of digital competency. For all of us who want our young women to have active social lives and to be able to find rich information and interactions in order to be safe and find the information and resources they need to have some coaching on what they're going to experience in the online world. They need not only devices and software and applications, but they also need coaches. And so one of the missing links sometimes, particularly in the rural schools all around the world, are teachers who have a digital competency themselves and who have a comfort level with the use of the internet and the web as a teaching tool, or even have access. I would just also, so I'm going to say two other things. Sometimes we see governments partnering with the private sector to initialize the growth of cyber cafes. And there are some cultures where women and girls are going to have almost no access to cyber cafes. Schools might provide a different option. One of the things that sometimes has happened in schools is that when a school gets a computer lab, it is able to open the lab up at other hours when the children aren't using it to the community and begin to build training. So now I'm going to come to my final point. At the IGF, we are focused on trying to create awareness among governments to come and participate actively. I think we need to broaden our outreach to not just the ministers of information and the ministers of ICT, but the ministers of education and the ministers of health, since those are the ministers who today may be deploying digital applications and centers, and we may be able to make a great deal of progress with them as they are going to be investing in building digital access, and we may be able to encourage them to better understand the needs that we see.
Hello, hi. My name is Caroline Wamala, and I'm from the Swedish Program for ICT in Developing Regions, SPIDER. And I just have a very small comment. I think it's great that we're finally having a panel on women at the IGF. I've been following this very closely since 2006. And I think we also need to be careful and remember that women are not a homogeneous group. We must take into consideration the heterogeneity of the term women. So as we're discussing technical aspects and governance issues, let's remember that they're indigenous women, they are, all these different levels of intersections that we should take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And I think you really find it here, that this diversity expressed here from all different, from all different backgrounds, and bringing in very diverse concerns. Now I'd like to come back to Dorothy on the other side.
Hosting a special lunch for all the Dorothys afterwards. My name is Dorothy Gordon. I'm the Director General at the Ghana-India Kofi Annan Center of Excellence in ICT. And I'm here actually as part of the FOSFA, the Free Software and Open Source Foundation for Africa delegation. I want to call the attention of the group to the open movement. I think it's very important that we pay far more attention than we have been as women to that dimension of IT. But the real issue that I want to bring to the table is how are we going to measure progress? With all this talk, whether it is in general about women in IT or whether it is about internet governance and women, we don't have very clear metrics for how we're going to measure progress. Now, there's no point, I believe, in lobbying government. Sometimes I'm part of government. There's no point lobbying government unless you have something which can give them a scorecard, that they can see very clearly where they are. And I've been very shocked to find out that much of the data, at least on the African continent, much of the data concerning IT has not been gender disaggregated, even though there are very clear guidelines in the UN statistics from the UNSO, the UN Statistics Office, about the disaggregation of data. We are not seeing it for IT. So I think there are very basic things that we can do as a group to define the metrics and then challenge people to improve their metrics. Otherwise, we'll just keep going round and round and we're not going to see much progress. The other thing I would like to mention is that I have been profoundly shocked at the number of international IT meetings that I go to, and there are all male panels, even in institutions which are theoretically headed by women. You go to the meeting and it is all male panels. And we are told that there are no women in IT who can actually be the face of women in IT at some of these meetings. So I really believe it's also important that we put together our database so that nobody has an excuse, and that if they're looking for a woman speaker, they'll be able to find that speaker, and that we should have something which we will just click on a button on the panels at these conferences, and we'll be able immediately to see the percentage of female representation. Because you can mentor the girls at a certain level, but if they're only seeing on TV and in the media that it's all men, they will only go so far, and I don't think that's what we want. Thanks.
Thank you. We only have a few more minutes, so I'll just call on two more who are on the lineup. So over here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jerry Rionge, and I really do not want to say anything at this point because most of us have said most of what I'd like to say. I'd like to acknowledge Catherine Wanjiko, and I don't know how many other Shakira chicks would be here from the IHAB, and if only she can have a chance to speak and say something about her experiences. And they actually won a grant to develop an application for the agribusiness sector, and I think this is really one of the upcoming younger generation of women who are actually doing great things here in Kenya and beyond. So let's applaud her, and also let's give her a chance to say something.
Hi all, my name is Catherine, and I'm one of the Akira Chicks. Most of you know about Akira Chicks. It's a forum of women in IT. We came together trying to encourage more female participation in the IT sector, and we tried that by reaching out the ladies, the underprivileged girls in the community. We recruited 35 of them, took them through training for 1 year, and we had 20 of them graduate about 2 months ago. And we've been trying to mentor them and encourage them to develop websites, and some of them are getting into mobile applications. And aside from that, Akira Chicks, we've been trying to develop applications that can help change the world. We have one of the products we developed is M-Farm. It's a mobile application that helps farmers buy and sell their produce together. And we also won a grant from the InfoDev through World Bank, which we are starting to use now to encourage more women and more participants through developing mobile applications that can help change the world. So I would say we are on our way to getting there, and we are having more and more women come out. Thank you.
Thank you. So the last point on this side, I'll call, yes? Okay. Last two, okay? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Anne Ikiara. I come from Nairobi. I am wondering, of course, a lot has been said about women and ICT, but I'm wondering if there is anyone making efforts towards making it easy for women to politically participate using ICT, because we all know what happened here in 2007, 2008. We used the internet and our mobile phones to propagate violence and to give hate messages, to spread hate messages around. Is there anyone trying to reverse that trend using ICT to make it easy for women to politically participate, because that is easy, and to also make it easy for us to now propagate peace messages using the mobile phone? Nairobi has got a few examples. I may not be able to talk about them now, but I really would like to hear if there is anyone in the audience who is already doing that, so that we can talk to each other. Thank you.
And also, if anyone would like to, if you know of any initiatives, then talk to her directly. Yeah. Can I have that last point, Jack? You wanted to say something?
Hello, my name is Jack. I'm from the Association for Progressive Communications. I just want to say that this year at the IGF, we've been trying to implement a gender report card for the IGF, which is basically 5 basic questions to ask organizers of workshops to fill in on number of speakers for men and women, to what extent is gender integrated into content and analysis and so forth. So if you would like to help us volunteer to also take part in, doing the gender report card, please do so and come and talk to me. Thanks.
I'm so sorry, I did forget Aisha on the lineup. She's been there like half an hour.
I wanted to thank all the speakers and the organizers for this. I think it's a really important discussion. And I come from the women's human rights movement, so it's very interesting to be in this space and see some of the connections. I thought it was interesting when Jan started by saying that when we access the internet, we do so with our civil and political rights intact. I think that's an important thing to remember, but not to forget, and also in our strategizing and initiatives, the issue of culture. And of course, culture can be a site of creativity and innovation, but there are also disempowering factors that can limit our access to rights. So I work with a campaign called Violence is Not Our Culture. We work primarily in Muslim-majority countries and communities in Africa and Asia, and this is an issue we look at a lot, how we can reclaim culture and work against cultural barriers. So, so any initiatives that happen from civil society to work around, for example, women's empowerment and access, I think also need to take this into account, especially in terms of access, because just because a household might be connected, where, I think that this was raised earlier, we don't know who is accessing the internet or other forms of communication. What are the barriers to do that? Language is one, I think gender is another, also age and minority status. So I think with the support of governments in terms of policy, we can keep in mind issues of cultural barriers as well as socioeconomic barriers, and investment from the private sector can also look at these issues in terms of multilingualism and women's rights. Thanks.
So can I ask Kathy and Jan to just respond quickly?
So I think this last hour and a half shows that if you do put a room full of women together, there's no stopping us. And the diversity of thought in the room, the expertise here, and the advocacy that you already see at work, it seems to me the next agenda is actually been discussed here. It felt to me like, as I heard the various issues that were raised, that there is a next agenda, that perhaps the best thing we can do out of this is go back, take a look, I'm assuming we're going to keep all this, right, and figure out what that next agenda is for the next time people want to start to move on that and take action steps. Since we say we are internet-centered, I wonder how we can capture that and have a way to communicate with each other after this meeting is over. So I don't know, there's folks I think in the room who can help us facilitate that, but it seems to me that rather than walk out and go have lunch, that we might think about what's the next agenda. Thanks.
Okay. I don't have much more to say because I think all of it has been said here. But I think it would also be important for us here to think about what action, practical action, can we take as we move into the next sessions. And one of those things is to be heard, to talk about the issues that we are talking about here, particularly thinking about the feeder workshops, so that this moves beyond and it moves out of these spaces, as I think some of you have said. And Jack is saying something to me. And the other point that I wanted to make is I think we really have started talking about some of the strategies that we already are using, and I think that we should go back to them. And I think the point that Dorothy made is also something for us to start thinking about. And okay, Dorothy Atwood, yes. Yes, the both Dorothys actually, are really issues that we need to begin to engage with much more deeply. The whole area around research and evidence building and sharing that information in the spaces where we need to be. So yeah, I hope to hear many of you, and I'm going to follow the tweets, and to hear you in the rest of the sessions at the IGF. Thank you.
Grace, do you want to say something?
I think I must say I'm very pleased at the level of debate, because when we were conceptualizing this, actually we were just thinking, I remember we were at Kaburo, we were saying only 29 people confirmed, and we were thinking we might start talking to ourselves. But I must say that certain issues have come up, and we must think of how to take them forward. Number one, it's this whole question of education. I am working with some young women in an informal settlements, and have just been trying to look at how they have been using the ICTs. And like Eunice pointed out here, when you want to find out how women are engaging, you also need to find out how the men are doing. So I talk to the boys and I also talk to the girls. And in the informal settlements, the boys have figured it out, you know. They own 4 SIM cards, they know who gives better internet access, who gives better downloads for music. But the girls, they're just using it for their basic needs. Again, to underscore what Nena said. And when I ask them, why are you not making use of the internet? And they will ask me, Grace, what time do I have? I must first of all meet my basic needs. But the boys have told me one of the solutions they think is to have ICT education, starting from schools, because then it says their sisters will have no choice but to start reading. And it is through education that then we will also have issues of cybercrime, issues of awareness. What do you put out there as a young woman? So that's what I want to say. So people in education, I think all of us must start agitating for this agenda to be put into our curriculums.
Thank you, Grace. And to end and close the roundtable, can I ask Kaburo to close it for us?
All right, thank you, Chat. I want to thank Chat for moderating this session. You've done a wonderful job. I think we can give a round of applause. There was so much to say, and we've ended up pretty much on time, so thank you, Chat. I also want to thank the speakers today for their insights and sharing on the work that they've done and the research. Thank you, Grace Githaiga, Alice Muniwa, Jan Moomen, Catherine Brown, Aisha Hassan, and Dorothy Owuko for giving us a local perspective. You've done a great job and I think enlightened us. A round of applause for the speakers. And Eunice Kariuki. I want to give a special thanks especially for Alice Muniwa, who's actually running the whole IGF. I think she's a stellar woman, a stellar person, and she was here at the beginning but had to step out. But I think we should really thank her for the wonderful work that she has done and the leadership she's provided. A round of applause for her.